welcome to the 200th episode of the 905 podcast. Believe it or not, we're at the big 200, which seems kind of incredible because it seems like we started this thing yesterday, Joel.
Yeah, well, it started off as a COVID project. We were bored and didn't have anything to do, so we said, "All right, let's start a podcast." And 200 episodes later, it's been a journey. Let's say that.
Yeah, definitely has. It's a labor of love some of the time, and sometimes a grind of love. But anyway, we're delighted that we're here at 200, and thanks to all our listeners who've come along for the ride over the last 200, and we've had some real high points in that time. And today we have a special guest and kind of a special announcement as well to celebrate on our 200th episode. And we'd like to welcome to the podcast well-known Canadian radio personality and now a podcast personality as well, Dean Blundell.
Can I clap for me?
You absolutely can.
Thanks, Roland. I'm just happy to be here on someone else's podcast. It's just like way less pressure when you're on someone else's podcast and you're not like going, I hope the guy doesn't say anything that'll get us taken off of YouTube. So I'm that guy today. So I'm happy to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for having us. And the reason why we're having you on is it's a rather big announcement for us, and it's something that it's important to us because we're kind of helping take this podcast to the next level. And that's the announcement that we will be joining your podcast network, Crier Media. The papers have been signed, and the progress, or the program is moving along. So we're going to be doing that hopefully very, very, very soon. And we wanted to bring you on just to give our listeners an idea of what that project is and what they can be starting to expect from us in terms of changes.
It's all based on internet pornography. No, I'm kidding. It's not. No, we're really excited. Being able to work with you in the 905 podcast and to talk to people, in this space about working together over the past, I would say 6 months to a year, is kind of the recruiting process that we've been on. It's been one of the coolest. Are we allowed to curse on this podcast?
Oh yeah.
They're cursing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The RTC hasn't caught to us yet. So
no. They know my name. I think I'm on the wall there. I think I got a picture on the wall at the CRTC.
Lots of dark holes in it.
Yeah. Well, don't let this guy back on the radio, whatever you do. No, we're really excited by it. By not just the fact that we get to work with other podcasts, but we get to work with podcasts that service a specific group of people, and that's what the 905 podcast does. And it's funny because when I first heard your podcast, it was after you had Karima on, who obviously we work with, Karima Saad, who's just a tremendous person, tremendous lawyer, activist, the most up the middle human being you'll ever meet in your life. And I listened to your podcast because Kareem was like, "Hey, I was on the 905 podcast," and I'm like, "What's the 905 podcast? That sounds fun." And so I went and listened to it. I'm like, "Oh my God, these guys actually they go and talk to people that are in the 905, right? Like, that are in and around the greater Toronto area, that people that have an understanding of being good citizens, people that have an understanding of standing up for marginalized folks, trying to do your best for individuals, and feeding into an ecosystem around you, and talking about the issues of the day and how the political issues, cultural issues are affecting people in the 905. And I'm like, I'm a 905er. This is awesome. I love this podcast. So I reached out to you guys, and I was so excited to hear back, and we're really excited to have you guys come aboard. And right now, obviously, what we're doing is moving from one migration site to another with deanblundell.com, and we're moving over to which is not much of an announcement anymore. We're moving over a new platform called Crier Media, which is kind of cool because it's a whole bunch of guys like us that have passion projects that started. A lot of them started during the pandemic, like you guys did. A lot of people that had an opportunity to be able to put something out there in the world that informed others, that made days better, that made people more willing to accept information, people that are kind of doing accountable content. And so We'll be launching, I would say, the new year, probably the first week of the new year after the kids get back to school. Is we've got a big launch planned, and then we've got like a real launch planned, I would say February, March. But Crier Media should be off the ground, and it is a flea market of people who love doing this, that want to make money and want to grow. So that's kind of what Crier Media is. It's like an agency. But the agency that has the ability to help people, generate revenue. And you guys were kind enough to say yes to us, and we couldn't be more excited. So we're excited. We're pumped.
Well,
Long-winded answer. How am I doing?
Well, we still have
Pass the
a few more.
test.
We still have a few more minutes to waste, so we'll keep going. But yeah, and we were excited to kind of join the network, mostly because it allows us to keep our freedom, doing what we do, and it doesn't ruin our vibe, and we don't have that. The one thing Roland and I were always worried about, because you're not the first one to come knocking on our door to say, hey, do you want to join us, do this? And our concern was always about, do they have the clout and the network to help grow our podcast and introduce us to new listeners? And two, were they ever going to tell us, you can't record that, or we can't let you, we don't want you to talk to this person or that person? And you and I had a conversation. That was one of the things, like, are you going to call me up and say, Joel, we can't put this episode on because you're talking with this person, we're worried we might upset somebody or someone? And that would,
by upsetting people, we've learned.
Oh yeah. we
I don't know if people we've upset now.
I don't know if we have more enemies than we have fans right now, but that was a big feature for us, was that you said, no, you just keep doing what you're doing, we're going to help you grow.
Yeah.
And so that was Roland and I had a conversation after I got off the phone with you, and was just like, yeah, this might be it. This might be the way to help us kind of take it to the next level. And it was great when we signed on, and we said, yeah, this is going to give us the opportunity to kind of grow this and expand our audience in the 905 region, and maybe even onto a national scale, because we think that this region is it really is probably one of the most important regions in the entire country.
Huge.
Not the province.
Yeah.
Because it's where everybody lives.
Yeah,
So
it's worth kind of revisiting that. Why we started this is just this. We had a background in politics at various levels, and we always said that, well, the problem with trying to get any candidate to win in this part of the world is it's a media dead zone. That's the phrase we always use. There is no media in much of the 905 other than Toronto centric media.
Yeah. And
sure, the media comes knocking at election time, and it's like, hey, how's the 905 going to vote? It's like, well, wouldn't it be nice if you asked that sort of between elections? And this sort of region of millions and millions of people that sort of drives the economy and drives the nation in so many ways, that also is massively underrepresented in the media. I mean, is that something you've been kind of familiar with, Dean, over the years, in your own line of work, both in sort of more traditional radio media to start off with, and now in new media?
Yeah, you touched on something really important there, Roland, and I find it, it's like boiled frogs over the past, I would say, 5 to 10 years, is the decrease in not just coverage of certain areas or the willingness to cover certain areas, but with the death of traditional media and with the culture war raging, people decided not to service regions, they decided to service cultures, right? And so what you've got this void that sits really at that base level of information, where people are being radicalized due to the cultural information that they're receiving. So when we talk about the genesis or the issue with traditional media, I truly believe this to be the case in Canada specifically. Over the past 4 years, the Canadian government has given in the neighborhood of $600 million to traditional media outlets as subsidies, right? These are not really subsidies. That was in an election year. And not only did they give $600 million to traditional media, they've got another billion and a half coming to traditional media with Bill C-18, Bill C-11, Bill C-18, of course, making tech companies pay traditional media companies to keep them afloat, because they've done just a shit poor job of actually running their business. And the reason why they've done a shit poor job of running their business is they're hopelessly fucking compromised. And they're hopelessly fucking compromised because they are funded by the government and special interests of that government that give our media in this country billions of dollars a year, whether it's in tax deductible receipts or little cash up front or operating expenses or COVID expenses. And I've got lots of examples of this. So I'm happy to back it up if anybody says, hey, what's he talking about? Just shoot me an email, info@deanblundell.com. I'll explain the whole thing to you. But these are actual numbers. These are actual dollar amounts that get given to traditional media outlets in this country. Now, with that cash injection, you'd think you'd see the growth of coverage regionally in this country. You've seen a contraction by half over the past 5 years. In 2018, this is just a great example. Alberta had in the neighborhood of, let's say, 10,000 journalists. No, let's say 1,500 journalists. That's the number. They now have about 750. So that's half. That's half in like 5 to 10 years that you've missed. So all that government money goes into those, and it's the same in every province, by the way. It's like contraction, radio, television, media. They're operating at a fraction of their staffing levels that they did 5-10 years ago, in the neighborhood of 20 to 30%. So now you've got all that extra government money, right? And that government money was to support those jobs that they've actually carved out of traditional media. But it never went to those people. It went to dividends. It went to shareholders of those traditional media companies, Bell, Rogers, Quebecor, et cetera, et cetera. So what you have now is you've got a bunch of people bubbling up underneath the system, like the 905 podcast. Like you've got our podcast. You've got other people that are doing tremendous content, whether it's news, whether it's sports that doesn't get covered anymore because they've taken that out of people's ecosystems as well. And here's the beautiful part of that. The people like you, people like us, are covering things out of passion, not out of duty to an executive relationship or the government that gives you money, or your local MLA that you're friends with that you need help rezoning something. So you write a hit piece on some kind of stupid fucking policy that exists for real environmental reasons. Case in point, the fucking highway that Doug Ford's plowing into Ontario. So, like you see less coverage about all of that stuff for a reason, because our media in this country isn't just hopelessly compromised by the government, by executive relationships, by business relationships, via their cultural leanings and relationships, whether at church, Rotary Club, Lions Club, a hospital fund that they might sit on together. They are so compromised because they're literally funded by different levels of government in this country: federal government, provincial government, municipal government. You can't get a legitimate story out of the Toronto Sun that doesn't have some type of liberal killing, conservative propping spin. You can't. It's impossible. Right. And do you know why? Because I do. The Toronto Sun and Post Media, every single Post Media paper in this country, is owned 70% by Chatham Asset Management in the United States. That is a U.S.-run company. What is Chatham Asset Management? Great question. And keep in mind, Canadian government is going to give Chatham Asset Management billions of dollars over the next couple of years because they want to keep nice and tight, nice and close, so that they can tell nice stories. That's the way it works here. So Chatham Asset Management is a very hard, right-leaning, conservative hedge fund run by friends of Donald Trump. So what do we get here in Canada? We get compromised American media. We get compromised American cultural values. We get compromised takes. We get a lack of coverage because people don't want to affect negative relationships, whether it be political, whether it be business, whether it be religious. And we are literally the most information-kettled country in the entire world, save communist countries like and the shit that you see in those countries, or the shit that you don't get to see in those countries like China. You're seeing what happens when you tell people they can't have access to information in China today. So long-winded answer. There's a reason why you guys, and we want to work with you. We know that you guys are the future of information in the 905. We know that you guys have a trusted voice, and you don't have to answer to any executive relationships. And this, my friends, is the future of content. This is the future of media, and that excites me.
Well, that's the kind of pitch that I like to hear. And I mean, if the Canadian government came to you tomorrow and said, hey, you know what, we're going to give money to new media too, because we need that kind of thing. Here's a couple of million. Would you say no?
Of course not. I would take that money and run. but here's the difference: is that if they gave me the money with the caveat, like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I wouldn't take it. Not at all.
And it's just, I remember when that first, the big subsidy happened to the newspapers. And this didn't get any coverage because it was the newspapers who were reporting it, right? But the amount that was given to Toronto Star management in bonuses that year was pretty much dollar for dollar identical to the subsidy they got from the Canadian government. I was like, fucking hell, could you be a bit less blatant about it, guys?
Same thing with that Bell COVID buyout. Do you remember that, when they said, hey, listen, we're going to give you like $34 million to pay your employees? The Canadian government said we're going to give Bell $34 million. You know what they did? Fired 250 people anyway, kept the money and paid it out as a dividend. Your money, my money. And you think for a second we get to take these. You can consume traditional media all you want in this country. You should not ever trust anything that comes out of that box, though, ever.
And it's just, I mean, the sickening thing about it, is the federal government so dumb that they don't attach strings to things when they write a check? But apparently, well, I guess the strings are, be nice to us. We don't care what you do with the money, just be nice to us. And I guess,
well, they could be smarter about it, because I mean, the Toronto Sun loves to write Trudeau bashing columns all the time, and I guess maybe that gives them cover for the program. Because say, see, we're, they still write their editorial. It's just, getting into. I always said there's a reason why the traditional media is failing. I think it's, in a free market, it's your product. People are not reading it because they say, well, we know it's bogus. We know I'm not getting the answers that I want or you're not asking the questions I want answers to. So why am I going to pay you $100 a year to subscribe to a paper that I'm not sure I'm getting the answers I want from it? Or if I walk away reading your story, I'm like, well, I have 20 more questions than I did before I started it. It's just it's a business model that I'm not sure works. I don't know. I hate
to say this for the sake of the journalists who work for those organizations, but particularly when you look at local media outside Toronto. I mean, if you look at the likes of the Burlington Post, that not so much the Hamilton Spectator still got some life left in it. Far from ideal, but it's a proper newspaper somehow. But the Burlington Post, the Oakville Beaver, the Milton, whatever it is, I don't think we should. You go to the websites, it's like pay to support media. It's like, why would I pay to support this absolute horse shit?
Yeah.
There's no journalism in it. I think they have one or two journalists kind of spread across 3 or 4 or 5 newspapers, and then of course they bring in stuff from other places. It's like, this is not worth saving anymore. This is not providing any service to anybody. And if you want local media, that's I feel sorry for the guys who work there, but just let it die already. What do you sort of feel the same way?
Yeah. And like you, I'm perplexed. Obviously there's like an internal conflict because I'm friends with a lot of journalists, and there are a lot of great journalists out there that work for very compromised organizations and try and do the best non-compromised version of the news that they can, or entertainment that they can, right? Glenn McGregor comes to mind. I think Glenn's great. He works for CTV. Graham Frisk, who works for the Toronto Star group of newspapers. I think he's tremendous. I think he's really, really good at his job. Althea Raj, I think she's great at her job. She's a Toronto Star employee. There are lots of people, Christina Tenaglia, lots and lots and lots of good reporters out there that really, at the very essence of what they want to do, are trying to do that job, right? However, as someone who worked in traditional media for a long time, it's not how it works. You don't have that choice. When you work for Bell, you do Bell's job. When you work for Quebec or you work for Tour Star, or you work for Chorus, or you work for Rogers Chorus to a lesser extent. They don't know what they're doing, so they can't tell anybody what to do. But you work for those organizations. You do the job that those organizations want you to do. You don't have a choice. You cannot have a conscience. You cannot have thought that stands in contrast to what the machine or that brand wants you to do. And if you're in, and I've experienced this the most when I was with Rogers for a couple of ill-fated years, it was just gross, is you do not eat your own. That was what they would tell you. So you couldn't speak poorly, even if the Blue Jays were doing poorly. You couldn't really speak poorly about them playing that poorly. You had to always find the shiny side of the coin. You couldn't when they were fucking 10 games under 500. You couldn't talk poorly about the brand. Like if you worked at Rogers during that Rogers blackout, you remember when they lost cell phone service for the whole country for, I don't know, fucking a week? They were prohibited from negatively talking about not having cell phone service in their company, fucking over 911 for a week. At Bell, same thing. You are prohibited. The NDAs that they make you sign just to be able to go and do your job and feel good about yourself pretty much suck the fun out of it, because all it is fucking fear on paper. And it's not so when you talk about reporters, I can separate reporters, good people that are trying to do a good job. Sean O'Shea at Global, I think he's tremendous. But then you also have journalists that are absolutely part of that fucking bullshit machine too, right? And I can name lots of them, but I'm not going to, because what happens is you get attacked when you name those people as well. So when you sit down and you really think about what we have for traditional media in Canada, it is not information. These people don't want to curate great information for the likes of Joel and Roland and Jimmy and Sally and Dean and everybody else. They want to create a power center where they can say, I've got Roland's access to Roland's bank account. I got access to Joel's mind. I've got access to Dean's emotions, Dean's triggers. This is our culture. We're representing our culture. If you've read anything in the Toronto Sun over the past 5 years, I don't know if you guys have, it is legitimately a propaganda outlet. Nothing more for Doug Ford, conservative values, anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ, everything conservative. And the dog whistling is so fucking loud that I sit there and I say these things and I absolutely slander them, and they don't say a word back because they know it's all true. And it's not just me, it's everybody. You guys know these things too, right? These organizations years ago stopped being organizations that serve the interests of the people, which is literally why they got their licenses in the case of radio. You got to serve the interests of that region. They don't serve the interests of any region. They just keep shutting off signals and radio stations and piping in, news from other centers into, you get Toronto news in Kingston. Well, that's the abatement of your license. I mean, and there are no rules because telcos own everything in this country, and newsprint is super, super tight with Canadian media and business that we literally, we like to paint ourselves as a democratic country. In media, that is the last thing we are. We're as fascist in media as it fucking gets. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I mean that because I was in it for 20 years. I've seen it. I've been in meetings where the strategy is to go and beg the government for money. It's not to super serve a demographic. It's not to do the right thing. It is never, in traditional media, the right thing is to never do the right thing. It's to have no values and keep that money pot kind of in those taps in the money pot coming in so that you can super serve your demographic. And the demographic that these organizations super serve are cultures. They're wieners. They're people. They're left. They're right. They're conservative. They're liberal. It's not, hey, I want that information because I really need to know what's going on in the World Cup today, or I really need to know what's going on downtown Toronto today, or I would like to know about the news in this area. It's never the news. It's always a news meant to take you out of your fucking comfort zone, make you angry, make you sad, or compel you. And that's not news. That's propaganda.
Well, when we started doing this, kind of one of the things that maybe we didn't write down, but one of the, I think the unwritten rules that Roland and I abide by is the question is always why is that thing happening? And if it's good reason, great, wonderful. We would like to know about it. But if 9 times out of 10, it's like, well, it's usually because somebody didn't do their job, or somebody was embarrassed that they screwed up, so they kept covering it up and whatnot, and they just perpetuated the problem. If that's the case, then we have a right to know why, and I think we also have a right to be angry about it and to say, well, can we do something better? Is there not a better alternative out there? And that's something that traditional media just hasn't really addressed it, in my opinion, or to provide that. Well, why are things the way they are, and could they be better? Is there a better alternative out there than what we're stuck with? That, quite frankly, I don't think works for a lot of people on a day-to-day basis, which is why it's so easy to get people ticked off. It's like, yeah, we're building another highway, as you said earlier, the Highway 413, but we know deep down we're still going to be stuck in traffic. We're still going to be stuck bumper to bumper on the 401, the 403, and the QEW on our way home from work, because and that highway is going to be billions of dollars that could have been spent on nurses' salaries, building new hospitals, making sure that our schools are the best that they can be, or just fixing the existing roads that we've got. And I think, like, people deep down, they know that. So, that's where we're at.
I got a question for you guys. A question. Do you think that, because there's a commonality, right? Everybody hates the government. Like, it hates provincial government, hates the federal government. It's easy to hate. Like, guys on the right hate the government, guys on the left hate the government. But I really feel like there's unity there, right? There's unity on both sides. Doesn't matter the culture.
Exact same thing. Yeah, that's the one that unifies everybody.
I feel the same way about traditional media now. I don't know if you guys do, but I feel like, because we have so many people like you, like me, like other people around there that are sharing accountable information and calling people out on their bullshit, their lies, which we never had a chance before, right? If you remember back in the big three, television, print, radio, the information you got was fucking the truth. It was just like the unmitigated fact. Right now, it's not. Now we have the ability to question those things, as you guys do here such a great job of it on the 905 podcast. But, questioning things in real time in front of people. Do you think that we've reached that watershed moment where because trust scores in traditional media in Canada today are like 28%. 10 years ago, they were like 60, right?
I think
so. Do you think we've reached that moment?
I think so. Yeah, for two reasons. One, people are smarter than everyone else gives them credit for.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that.
So do you think they've been taking us for idiots? That's the question. And do you think that's the narrative? So, like, where we're like, okay, fuck, yeah, we're not as dumb as you're painting us out to be.
I don't know if they've taken us for idiots. I think that they just don't care. I think the structure of media, if watch any press conference on at Queen's Park, right? They are rushing to cover what does Doug Ford or Stephen Lecce or Steve Clark or whoever the scandal is at the time. Let's get them out, and we have to do press conference. And they'll do the press conference, but the questions asked, there's rarely a follow-up, right? They love the press conference because the person stands up, somebody asks a question, hey, why are we doing X, Y, or Z?
Yeah.
And they give the scripted answer, we're looking out for the taxpayers' dollar, Okay, don't feed me the bullshit. Like, we know, like, there's no follow-up to say, no, you're giving the same answer 5 times in a row. This thing's a waste of time. We know that you've done this, the numbers don't add up, that whatever the case, there's no follow-up, there's no holding to account, because that's like, oh, that's rude and whatnot.
It's asking the next question, isn't it? It's
yeah.
like, why did Bill 23 come out now rather than a month ago or in 6 months' time? It came out because the municipal election just happened and all the councillors are on vacation, and it was announced on a Friday because that's when you do things that people aren't going to like. And those kind of things are really important to get out there, and they just, in our current media, they just never fucking do.
No.
But then they only get the one thing that I keep hearing from our guests is that, because we try and do a half hour, 40-minute format, and in that half hour, 40-minute format, it's hard to just use my 30-second soundbite. You can't do that for half an hour. We're not going to let you do it. We're going to hold you to it. If you don't give us a straight answer, like yes or no, did you know this? Why are we doing this? Give us a detailed answer.
Which is why we're yet to speak to a single conservative.
Oh, we've asked them. We keep asking them. They'll never come on because
shocker.
You have a half hour, a 30-second soundbite. It's not going to fill that half an hour.
No.
And I think that's why people turn to podcasts and new media, is that, well, I don't care about filling the 6 o'clock news quota. I don't care about, well, I need to fill a spot between our story about, the little girl's lemonade fundraiser and the hit and run incident downtown. I don't need to worry about what am I going to do for that 5 minutes. That's not my job. My job is, I have a question. I want it answered. If you're not going to answer it, fine, but I'm not going to let you off the hook.
Yeah.
And I think we've done a lot of good episodes where in the course of our discussions, I myself learned something. Oh, wow. Okay. I got a piece of information I did not know beforehand. And that changed my point of view on the subject.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that our listeners felt the same. Like, okay, that changes my perspective on the issue.
Oh, you're talking about discourse. You're talking
Just
about discourse where you've got open-minded people on either end of the spectrum going,
yeah, and I
you
say,
tell me something, I'll listen, I'll tell you something, you listen, and we'll arrive at something. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a real question. Like, this is, why did you do this? Because from my perspective, it looks like you're covering something up. So tell me, like, you have the microphone, Dean. Tell me, why did you do X, Y, and Z?
I mean, a good example of that, I mean, the one that sticks in my mind anyway was that there was a story about the chief of police in Halton who went on vacation in the middle of COVID. And we won't go back over that story, but in the week afterwards that came out, a lot of people were saying, fire the guy, just fire the bum. Mm-hmm. And the police service didn't fire the bum. I'm not saying he's a bum. He's since been on the podcast.
There's an opportunity here that says he may be a bum too. So just keep that open.
Yeah. Neither saying one thing nor the other. However, what came out of the conversation was the more complex part of the deal, which was that if you fire a chief of police, you're going to have a legal case the size of Arizona on your ass for the next 10 years from the police, the police association and everybody else. So it's not that easy to fire someone. Now, that's not necessarily saying that. That's not saying that's right. That's not taking a point one way or the other. But it's making the story a lot more nuanced and kind of interesting than just fire the bum. Hopefully we can do that. I mean, we're certainly not in an age where nuanced ideas are always encouraged. I mean, one of the questions I was going to ask you is like, basically we have in Canada already. We have Rebel Media. If you want to talk about new media, the kind of titan of new media in a way is Rebel Media. Are you just creating a kind of left-wing rebel media, or is it something more than that?
What Crier Media? You mean?
Yeah.
Oh no, media. Rebel Media is media. That's not a real outlet. That's rage farming, hatred, and grifting, and stealing and lying. If you work at Rebel Media, the rumor is if you don't get punched, you don't get paid. Those are the biggest cocks in Canadian whatever history. They're not media. They are grifters. They are liars. They are alt-right pieces of shit that want to usher in some kind of theocratic grifting fabric into Canadian society where you can get paid by your culture to be a total asshole and ruin people's lives just for money. That is what they are. That is what True North is. That is absolute garbage for your fucking brain. We are accountable people that amplify the work of other accountable people. That's it. That's what we do. That's what Crier Media is. That is what we are becoming. We are an agency of people who want to put out information and have a conversation, make money by what they do, and people that want to grow. We don't care about anything else other than, are you a good human being? Are you accountable? Do I have to give you any direction? Because the best way for us to operate is if I let people like you do passionate work, things that you know more about than I do. I can't give you direction when it comes to you guys wanting to be accountable, tell the truth, and do a fucking great job. That's just in you, and you do it. So we want to harness that and work with you, and then find a way to amplify that voice in amongst a community of a couple hundred other people that feel the same way about doing accountable content in Canada. This isn't a joke for me. Like, this isn't a yeah, we make money, and yeah, we're self-sufficient and all those other things, but that gives us the opportunity to say, okay, what do you want to fucking do? Like, what's your legacy? How do you want people to consume you? Who do you want to work with? I don't want to work with anybody that wants to make the world a worse place. I just don't. Mm-hmm. I don't want to work with anybody that wants to lie. I don't want to work with anybody that wants to gaslight a group of people for just existing. I don't want to work with those people. I want to work with people that want to do accountable content, tell the truth, fill those gaps that are absolutely fucking tunnel-sized holes in media in this country, with good individuals who do a much better job of the things that those guys don't do. Listen, you don't know the kind of job it's kind of like going to the United States. You guys ever been to like a Costco or Sam's Club in the United States? You guys ever been down there?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, what are we missing up there? Like, what don't we have? They have 4 liters of Coca-Cola here. they got a bag of chips that I have to like have a friend help me carry out of the store. They got chocolate bars that I've never seen before in my life. They got alcohol and cannabis that you didn't even know existed. It just blow your mind. That is exactly the same thing with media in Canada. Exactly the same. Is that you don't know how kettled you are in this country. You can joke all you want about China. You can joke all you want about the lack of freedom of press in different places like Russia or Turkey or different countries. We do not have the freedom of press here. We don't. We have certain groups that have been minted to look like they are it, and everybody's sick and tired of that shit because we have eyes and ears. We can read. We can comprehend. We understand that they're lying to us. We understand that they'll mix in some stories about a hit and run and stuff like that, but they'll never cover anything that touches any of their executive relationships with police boards or, chiefs that go on fucking vacations. They're not touching those things. And the reason I don't touch those things is because they don't want you to know. They don't want you to fucking pull back Oz's curtain. That's the last thing they want. And that's all I want to do. And it's going to be a fun time.
Well, I'm gonna wrap it. That's the last word because I don't really have any way to top that. So I'm gonna end off the episode with that. But thank on behalf of Roland and myself, thanks Dean for inviting us into the network, and we're looking forward to what the future's going to hold and where we're going to take this thing for the next 200 episodes. So thanks very much, and we're looking forward to this partnership.
Guys, I'm really excited. Nice to finally meet Roland. I only ever deal with Joel, but good to see that you guys both have glasses like I do, so we look smarter. Generally speaking, people with glasses look like they care more.
Absolutely.
But no, I'm really excited to have you guys, involved in what we do, and very grateful that we could have be taken seriously enough by a group of guys that actually do a wonderful job of keeping people informed in their niche. And we're excited for the 905 podcast. We're excited to work with you guys. And come January, we'll obviously have some big announcements, but don't ever stop. And listen, if you're a budding 905 podcast and you've got your own thing, never stop trying, never stop creating, never stop following your passion, never stop delivering information. Don't be afraid. You guys have been obviously attacked several times over the past couple of years. You know what it's like. It's not real. Internet hate is not real. Go out and do your job. Go out and be part of the solution when it comes to keeping people informed in Canada. That's what we need. We need to crowdsource good people so that we can make sure that we change the tide of the bullshit that we've been fed for a very long time in this country. So thank you guys.
That's great. Thanks so much, Dean. Thanks.